going to call tonight's meeting of the Planning Board to order. Today's date is May 19th, 2020. It is 7 p.m. and we're at the Frank L. Wigan Auditorium. First order of business is approval of minutes of the meetings of March 17th
Recording in progress.
May 5th.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the minutes of the previous meeting.
Second. Aye.
Next up is 190R Newbury Street. Who's presenting?
Yes. I believe our engineer is on Zoom. Of course, I thought he was going to be here, but not his fault. So this is a matter that has been before the Construction Review Committee, and we had a couple of outstanding issues with respect to fire department radius and whether or not we had complied with the fire department's needs in terms of their radius turnaround in order to get sufficiently around the building and to be able to make all of the turns. And at the time we were at construction review, we did not have our engineer available to us, and we were, my clients, Arthur Pimentel and Bob Danisco, we were a little unsure whether we had gotten that far, and I believe that, in fact, we have, that material has been sent over to the fire department, that we have been able to demonstrate that we do comply with the Peabody Fire Department access requirements. The other issue was some degree of detail being provided with respect to the access easement that allows us to get from Route 1 out to our property. And toward the end of that meeting, we were able to find the appropriate page and of our plan set, and we determined that there was detail provided in the form of some islands and both islands and landscaping that provided an access that was highly usable, very well delineated, and that could be readily discerned by the public as a means of getting here. And I think that if the board has questions of Mr. Capichetti with respect to those details, we're happy to respond to them. If we could invite Mr. Capichetti to the meeting.
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you.
So, Tony, would you like to speak to the issue of the fire department radii and also the access roadway, whether or not we've made any changes, or whether that detail had always been provided, however, we didn't recognize it at the Construction Review Committee?
Yeah, thank you. So yes, the turning radiuses were designed with the largest apparatus in mind. We got the Captain Darling sent over the apparatus spec sheets, and we amended the plans with the sheet C12 that shows that the apparatus can enter from Route 1 South into the site through the relocated access
excuse me, can we raise the volume? We cannot hear or discern what this presenter is saying to us. It's not loud enough. It's undiscernible.
Sir, did you hear that comment?
I did hear that comment. I don't know if you can hear me any better or.
Can you speak up louder? Would that help the situation?
Do we have any volume control here? No?
It's out of my hands.
Tony, we're trying to turn the volume up here. Tony, say something.
Yes, is this any better?
Ah, perfect. It's almost too
All right.
loud.
If I get too loud, just stop me. So, as I was saying, was the design always incorporated the largest piece of apparatus, the aerial platform vehicle. We did receive the turning template from Captain Dowling, put it into auto turn, and created a new sheet C12 vehicle access plan that was submitted. That piece of apparatus can enter from Route 1 South, turning into the former Latitude parking lot and traversing the relocated driveway access that separates the access to the site from the parking for the fitness center use. And then it reaches the kind of cul-de-sac parking loop at the entrance and can fully circumnavigate that island and then exit the site. So we have submitted that detail. We've also, as Jack has said, showed the reconfiguration of the parking lot. One of the comments that Will Pollitt had was trying to divert vehicles going to this apartment use from having to interact with the patrons of the fitness center and the other businesses up front. So they only kind of cross in one location right at the entrance, which all parties understand. There's nothing we can do with that. We're not going to create a separate entrance. So we've accommodated that request as well.
Sorry. And to amplify upon that access way shows on your sheet C3, correct? And the detail provided is in the upper portion of C3 of the plans that had been submitted to the board.
Excuse me.
And also, we are not proposing a separate and more direct access due to some state highway issues. Am I correct that the state highway was, from the get-go, we're trying to limit the number of curb cuts to this property?
That is correct. They have a valid state highway permit that contemplated the residential use, and they were only granted the two existing curb cuts that they have on the site. So we are required to use that entrance that we're proposing to connect to, but we did everything we could to accommodate Mr. Pollitt's request of separating that driveway access through the main parking area.
Does the board want us to try to put a plan on the screen to discuss?
I know I would, Jack, because Kurt, I don't believe we have C12. If there's a new sheet created, what I'm looking at online stops at C11, I believe. This does as well.
So, I don't know if I can share screen, if that's possible.
Tony, did this got submitted electronically, correct? This plan?
I provided it to the applicant and yourself for submission to the planning board, but it was submitted to Captain Dowling electronically.
Oh. So we don't have one in the box tonight.
I could forward it to Mr. Bellavance if he's online right now.
Would it need to be
Yeah, I don't think we can
advanced to a different?
I don't think we can just receive a
Yeah, sorry.
drawing.
Yeah. Does anybody have paper copies that? Yeah. And is our material being shown on? No, it's not shown on that. Oh, those are. They're a little older. Yeah.
safe to assume potentially if we don't have the new C12, that we also might not have revised sheets for the C2 that you're speaking of? Or? Okay.
Attorney Kelty, you're aware of this memo from Community Service? Yes. Suggesting that we continue until we have all our documents?
Yes, I am aware of that.
Yes. Do you have anything further at this time?
I do not.
We do have a commentary from Community Service asking us to continue this. I'll say the board.
Could I ask the lawyer or the engineer a couple of questions while we're here?
Please.
Thank you. So the roadway coming in through the parking lot of the health club and then into the long roadway getting to the property. On some previous gyration of this project, there was all kinds of elevation changes to that roadway and retaining walls, and that roadway is being elevated in places 3 to 6 feet above where it currently exists. It appears that the roadway is staying approximately at the elevation in this proposal that it is currently at right now. Is that a fair assessment?
That is correct. So we weren't involved with the original submission of this plan. We came in, there's a existing trunk sewer line that goes through there, and Will Pollitt's had some comments about that raising of grade. And in some areas, it was 6 to 8 feet that it was coming up. So that's how we got involved for the project. We redesigned the stormwater system, which allowed us to match the grades to the maximum extent practicable. There is one small area, because there's a valley that runs through there where we get about 3.5 feet of fill, but for the most part, we're at or about 12, 18 inches above at the center line of the existing grades. And we were able to minimize the use of walls. When we do have walls, they're down to 4 or 5 feet in height. And then we also maintained access to all the PMLP poles and actually created a cut in the curb with the graded roadway down, so you can get through the PMLP can get through the parking lot and access their poles as well.
The issue that was addressed was public services. With the original plan, there were serious issues with respect to the depth of the main. The city has a significantly, I think, 24-inch or even bigger sewer main that runs down the old railroad bed. And our plan, the original plan, was causing that to be almost another 6 feet of fill above it. And that was not the issue of access to that in the event of an emergency was a real showstopper for the Public Services Department. So Tony's correct, obviously, that when they approached the project, they lowered significantly the entire site and reduced the amount of fill being brought onto the property. And at the same time, the removal of those walls made it easier for Peabody Municipal Lights apparatus that's out there to be accessed. They were almost denied access under that original design due to the height of these retaining walls. So as Tony has said, we've either created carve-outs or have lowered so that we're at grade.
So I've spoken to two of the engineers, specifically at Peabody Municipal Light, and they were very concerned about exactly what you stated. So is this a fair statement that access to the electrical transmission line poles that currently exists will substantially be equal to or better than after the project is completed than exists right now? Is that a fair statement?
It's a fair statement, and I think Tony can address that. Yep.
That is correct. So you'll be able to access down the area below the poles as you are now. And you'll also be able to access from the parking lot in other areas to, if you need to set up on a hard surface versus the ground. And then you'll have a graded out access roadway that goes down and follows the poles as well.
Thank you very much. No further questions from me.
Anyone else? Questions, commentary? What's the pleasure of the board?
Make a motion to continue to our next meeting?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous.
Will that be June 2?
That is our next meeting, but I believe we have a couple of public hearings.
I know that.
If you're on a fast track, you might want to contact Drew, set something up for that one. Or the
I understand. Fine, June 2.
All right, thank you for your time.
Next order of business, 29 Newbury Street. Would the presenter please step up? And your name and address for the record, sir.
And then when you're done, unpress it and you'll hear them better.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. For the record, my name is Chris Sparagis. I reside at 57 Elmwood Avenue in the town of Saugus. I'm a registered professional engineer with offices at the Engineering and Survey Office of Williams and Sparagis in Middleton, Massachusetts. We're here to present our plans for site plan approval for redevelopment of number 29 Newbury Street up on Route 1 North. I have a plan prepared. Is it okay to put it up on an easel so the members can see? With me here this evening as well is the attorney for the project, Attorney Ethan Vonzelitis, and we are here representing the applicant, LA Holdings, LLC, and the owner of the property is 29 Newbury Street, LLC. The property is the triangular-shaped lot that you see highlighted here on the plan, and it is located on Route 1 North, also known as Newbury Street, just north of the existing and newly constructed Phytopia building. This is where Brothers Cucina used to be, the 7-Eleven gas station and the former Brothers building. There's an existing right-of-way that's identified on record plans as a stripway. It is 60 feet wide, and that's just south of our property. We have frontage and access onto that stripway, and we also have an existing curb cut on the State Highway, Route 1. Abutting us to the north is the overpass for Route 128. So this is that property, Don's Power Equipment, right before the bridge there as you head up north on Route 1. In the existing condition, there's an existing two-story concrete structure in the middle of the property. And then on the other side of the property here, to the east, is an existing one-story metal building. And the existing property is improved by pavement and paved areas and gravel. Formerly, it was also used as a pool equipment and sales operation. We actually, if you look at the aerial photos for the property, they still show where the pool displays were. We have those shown on this existing conditions plan. So what we're proposing to do is, obviously the property has been vacant for quite a while, and the owner has identified a potential tenant, LA Holdings, and they'd like to set up an auto sales dealership where they'll be able to sell vehicles and also do some repair work to those vehicles. We have a proposed plan that I've got colored up to show you how we're going to improve the property. We have a few colors on this plan, but we're proposing to leave the existing buildings intact. They will be improved and to made look better, if you will. And we are also proposing a 1,200 square foot addition off of the main building, and it extends in a northerly direction away from the building. This will allow for additional space inside the building for the operations. And then what we're doing in order to try to improve the existing stormwater management condition, we are proposing a slight reduction in the paved surface, a slight reduction, and as part of that, we're also going to be paving, repaving, if you will, the existing paved surfaces to make it have a nice new surface, and it's going to be striped to support the used car dealership and the repair operations. The sales part or the display part of the operation will be in the front of the property, in front of the building, and that part of the plan that's shown in white. And then there'll be a fence at the back of the sales spaces where you see that change in color. And then in the back, that surface on the ground will be maintained as gravel, and that's where some repairs to vehicles will take place. There are two existing bays in the metal building out back where service will take place, and one existing bay in the existing building, the main building, if you will. Let's see if I have anything else. According to the zoning ordinance, with our setup, 30 parking spaces required. We're providing 50 parking spaces, and they're shown striped on the plan. We met with city departments not too long ago, where we received some comments relative to landscaping and stormwater. Let me address the landscaping first. There is an existing landscape strip out in front of the project, and although we haven't prepared a formal landscaping plan, portions of that existing landscaping strip that was previously maintained, you can see a little bit of old mulch in a bed in the front of the property. A portion of it is in the right-of-way of Route 1. We agreed to continue to maintain that strip and improve it. We're going to be presenting a small landscaping plan that'll show those improvements. And then Mr. Langley, the Director of Engineering, issued a memo following that department meeting where he outlined several items that he'd like us to address. That memo is dated yesterday. I spoke with Mr. Langley on the telephone today because he explained that he wasn't going to be able to attend tonight's meeting. The memo includes a wish to make some additional stormwater improvements. And he and I have scheduled a telephone call with some representatives from DEP to make sure that we can do those improvements at this property. He's also asked us to install new water and sewer services, which we've agreed to do because the pipes are relatively old. So this is an opportunity to make some improvements on those utilities. We did submit a stormwater report. We normally analyze the 2-year, the 10-year, and the 100-year storm. Mr. Langley asked us to also add in the 25-year storm to the report, which we agreed to do. And then out on the stripway that I described to you, there's an existing catch basin that he wanted us to investigate. We've been able to do that and found that it's just a simple dry well. He wanted to know how it operated, and we're going to add that information to the drawing for him. And then he mentioned that if it's determined that when we file with the plumbing inspector with the building permit that we are increasing the sewer flow, we'll be subject to infiltration and inflow fee. And I think that's summarizes Mr. Langley's notes. But that's the end of my formal presentation, Mr. Chairman. But Ethan and I are here to answer questions, and I'll turn it over back to you.
Thank you. Where do you stand with Mass DOT?
So Mass DOT, we have not filed a highway access permit with Mass DOT. They normally they don't want us filing with them until we secure our local approvals. We do have a change in use, and so we'll my intentions are to call April Antonelli, who's the district permit engineer for District 4, to ask her if we even need to file, because we're not proposing to change the curb cut. It'll be, we'll be at their disposal, if they wish for us to file a simple application for highway access, we'll do that, but we're not proposing to change it.
And your special permit, have you been before the council yet?
I'll let Attorney Gonzalez answer that.
I tried to file a special permit application, but as you probably know, the city council will not accept any applications until all prior approvals are obtained. So this needed a variance from the Board of Appeals. I obtained that variance. It requires site plan approval from the planning board, which is why we're here this evening. And if approved, then I'll move forward with filing our special permit application.
What variance did you need from the ZBA?
The variance was predominantly all for landscaping and I think a right side yard setback of about 17 feet.
And you've obtained that?
I've obtained it and a copy of it is with your application.
It does seem you have a little more engineering reports to get the DPS and water reports. Am I correct?
Well, yeah.
So prior to the meeting, as I said this morning, Mr. Langley reached out to me to review his memo because he wasn't going to be able to be here tonight. After we had a nice conversation, I reached out back to Attorney Bonzalides, and we talked about the meeting tonight, whether or not Mr. Langley was satisfied that he would be willing to say okay to a conditional approval, assuming that we were going to address all of his comments. So I called him back, and I asked Mr. Langley if he felt comfortable for me to report to the board that he would be okay to include his memo as a condition of approval if the planning board saw fit to approve the site plan tonight. And he said he didn't have a problem one way or the other. He did say if there were other items that caused a continuance, so be it, but he didn't want to hold up the project.
I really don't think anyone would be opposed to this plan you're proposing. However, you need a few more documents to make their way to us. And there is a recommendation also from Community Development to continue. Thank you. Any questions from the board? Commentary?
If you don't mind, through the chair. Unless I'm misinterpreting this, are you not planning on using the most northerly curb cut onto the highway?
So we are proposing to use that curb cut. That's an existing curb cut.
Right, but I don't see any arrows pointing to it or creating motion through the lot to point to that particular. I thought you were abandoning it and just coming in from this quote-unquote strip way.
So no, that's not the intent. We do show two-way arrows. If it would be more clear, we can add two more, another arrow pointing to the exit.
If you're going to modify the drawing, if you have to modify the drawings, I think that would be appropriate. If that's the only reason for modifying the drawings, I think we all understand, and there would be no need for that. What does one do with the 4.6-foot encroachment on the stripway? I don't think anybody knows who owns the stripway. My suspicions are that it was formed by Mass Highway many decades ago when they built that interchange, which probably made that lot behind here be inaccessible. That's, maybe I'm not portraying it correctly, but basically landlocking. My understanding is the state of Massachusetts, in the process of a land taking, cannot create landlocked land. So that's probably what this stripway is, but is it okay that we have an encroachment of the building onto that 60-foot?
Yes, it is okay. It's been there since probably the early 70s. In that way, I believe, services the property that's behind us. And I don't know if Jack's still here. Jack, your client owns that strip, right? Next.
Maybe, I mean, 60 is an unusual number. I mean, it could easily be made 50 and make the encroachment disappear. It's a possibility.
That would take for a very nice landowner.
Just a couple of, well, nobody knows who owns it, right? So,
No, we do.
I can speak to that. This is actually land court, and this is called Strip Way. And yes, it is. The title reflects that my client has a greater number of rights than others. We are not disturbed about the encroachment whatsoever.
Okay.
And at the same time, to try to alter the stripway in any fashion would require us to be at the land court, which will just be...
who's your client exactly, Jack?
My client is the land in back. My client
Down.
is...
In back is down.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I'm just...
Uh-huh.
Yes, I'm out here. We're at the end of stripway.
Right. The proposed storage facility. Is that right?
Storage, yes.
The proposed
It's the next thing on your agenda.
indoor storage facility. Understood, thank you.
Yep.
Just a couple more things. I probably already know the answer to this, but does the tenant, have they already secured their used car license, or is that, because I believe there's only so many of these around, right? So,
There's one more available, but you can't apply for it until you obtain your
like
special...
everything else.
Until you obtain your special permit.
Got it.
The city of Peabody makes it very easy to do business.
Yeah. So after some future work of examination or something, that you won't produce any more runoff than you currently produce, might you need infiltration basins?
Oh, sorry. So to answer your question, there is an existing catch basin structure in front of the main building. We've been asked by Bob to clean it out and see what that's all about. Mr. Langley has asked us to add additional stormwater improvements. It's a little bit complicated because we're in the watershed protection district, and there are some rules about what you can and can't do. So I've got a phone call scheduled with Mr. Langley and a gentleman from the Department of Environmental Protection. And if we get the okay from DEP, we will add some additional stormwater management along the lines of some underground infiltration.
So that dotted line that says Surface Water Protection District is the district west of the line? So most of your property is in it, right? Because it's kind of hard to discern.
Yep.
Okay.
You are exactly correct. So the stripway, the watershed protection district line
Yeah.
is there, and almost the entire property is within it. It's associated with Suntog Lake.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
By all means,
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board continue the hearing on the site plan approval for 29 Newbury Street until our next meeting, June 2nd, I believe.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Roy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Vote unanimous.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Too much stuff. $55 Pulaski. I had that somewhere. Next order of business, 55 Pulaski, and I believe
That too has a recommendation. I represent the Dennis and Georgia Giannis. They are the owners of the Roadhouse Pub. And as such, we've an issue with the building department, and which has now been transferred over to city solicitor's office. The question is whether or not this proposal can be entertained as a special permit. Query whether or not the conversion of the restaurant itself into 4 units and then the addition of townhouses would meet the what's called the powers test and the other cases that have been cited to determine whether or not you can have that kind of change of use such as we're proposing. Building commissioner is uncomfortable with categorizing it as a matter that could be addressed by issuance of a special permit, and as such he has expressed that reservations. Those reservations, I've prepared a memo in opposition, and that currently sits at the solicitor's office, and so we therefore are in agreement. We've brought no folks to make a presentation. We're in agreement that this matter should be continued until the June 2nd meeting, at least, awaiting a decision as to whether we can get a special permit to do this. So I'm asking for a continuance.
Through the chair. Jack, in addition to the use issues that you're having, are you expecting, is DPS currently reviewing it, or are they waiting until?
I think they're going to wait till, yeah, they're not going to use their time, such as the same question here, why utilize your time?
I only asked, but I was just wondering if we should continue beyond the June 2nd meeting, because I mean, even if you clear the hurdles with the solicitor's opinion, we still need to wait for DPS to. It's going to take more than 2 weeks, so.
I would just suggest we go to June 2nd, and as we come up at the end of next week, if we're, languishing still, then I would put in writing a further continuance.
so. You're requesting an extension? I am. Do I have a motion?
We will make a motion. Can you just explain a little bit as to, so this is an R1A, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, right across the street from light industrial.
That's correct.
Okay.
And the Mill Overlay District.
Yep, and a 40B with 51 units going in one of the buildings, likely.
Yes, that's where we are, yes.
Okay. And can you explain this rule that you just said, some rule that you said, some past precedents that between the lawyers?
Yeah, no, what I had cited was there are times when matters are presented as a special permit. So I have a pre-existing non-conforming use. In this instance, I have a tavern, pub, restaurant in an R1 zoning district. It has operated there with all its necessary permits for some 60 or so years. And as such, I believe we are pre-existing non-conforming. Now, and I don't think there's any disagreement on that. The question is whether you can do as much as we are proposing under the section in our zoning ordinance, which is 48, which is section 151, and whether or not the state law would provide for similar change. In my personal opinion, the case in point that is virtually right on point is a land court case, which was the Bally High restaurant. Almost identical in the sense that there was a restaurant operating in a single-family zoning district, and when they asked to tear down the restaurant and add and create a condominium complex that would be that would be much more dense and would be multifamilies versus single families. The land court was presented with the plan and was presented with the case, and they took the position at the end of the day that yes, and the test that I mentioned is a case with parties whose name is Powers, and they give you a three-pronged. Is it more intense? Is it rougher on the neighborhood? Is it those kinds of issues? And if at the end of the day, the city council in this instance could find that it is not worse than the current use, then they could, in my opinion, they could grant a special permit. That question is the question that had arisen in the building commissioner's mind, and so he has referred it to city solicitor for a ruling. If we are unhappy with that, as a matter of course, we could take the appeal of the building commissioner's decision to the zoning board of appeals, where I'm certain that they would uphold, but you'd be exhausting your remedies in order to frame the question for a court of competent jurisdiction, in this instance either being the land court or the superior court. I would say I'd take that question to the land court. We are hopeful that the issue will be resolved locally.
So two things come to my mind. And one is that it appears that there should be an exception to that rule. I think it's called Rule 17 of the City Council, that they need to hear from all other boards before they make a decision. Because I think in this case, it makes perfect sense to have them look at this first and not have all these other boards spinning their wheels. That's my opinion. The other opinion, and I don't live down there, but I'll bet you all the people that do live down there, out behind on Gallant and Spinelli Way, would love nothing more than that bar to be gone and to not be hearing noises on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night at 1 a.m. People slamming car doors and leaving there. So I agree with you. I think this is a much better use, a much less intrusive use to the neighborhood, myself. But I don't know.
And I'm not sure there is any kind of pushback on that, that theory. And we will find that out, certainly, if we get the opportunity to be before the City Council. And the reason that we are going to be before you is to try to have our design vetted so that when we get to the City Council, that we would be in compliance with Rule 17. But in the meantime, if the suggestion is being made is, we don't even know if you can get a special permit, not because of politics, but from a legal standpoint, that's the question that's being addressed right now. And we're not looking to utilize this board's time or anybody else's time until such time as that legal question is addressed.
Yeah, and I mean, Kurt happens to be here tonight, and he talks to people in the know in City Council and whatever, but maybe he can convey that thought that I just suggested, because what if when this goes to special permit, if it does, what if the City Council says, we think 21 units is too much, make it 17, then back here again with a whole different set of plans, right?
That would be true, but that's a discussion or an argument that is kind of policy based, and I'm not here to fight with the City Council or defend the City Council.
Trying to add some logic to this, that's all. Thank you.
Through the chair.
Logic doesn't always prevail.
Through the chair, if I may ask a couple of questions. It's been a while since I looked at 1.5.1, but is that the section that allows the City Council to approve a special permit if the proposed new use is, that's the language, not substantially more detrimental? Yes. So my question to you is, how is the building inspector making a ruling of sorts on this when it seems to me that's exclusively the province of the city council after a hearing to determine whether the proposed use is substantially more detrimental? Because that's the linchpin. Is it or isn't it substantially more detrimental? Am I right?
Yes, and that's correct. That is the linchpin, and they are the party that determines that. But with respect to your special permit application, what Al Tallarico was telling us at the Construction Review Committee was that he was of the opinion we were not eligible, and he would not circle the box that said it's a valid request for a special permit. And so that's sort of, we're trying to bring that issue to a head, determine its validity, and then have the question of whether it's substantially better or worse or more detrimental. That'd be determined by the council.
So his opinion was, in his opinion, you weren't eligible because the proposed use is substantially more detrimental.
I'm not sure he even makes that determination. I think he limits his to eligibility and let someone decide. You know, I am of the opinion at the Registry of Deeds and here, and I can file whatever I want. If you want to tell me it's inadequate, fine, but you can't stop me from filing. But
Yeah, I would agree with you, and I think it's really up to the city council to decide. And I don't know whether the Attorney Khan is going to, address that particular issue in his ruling as to whether the building inspector can even put a stop to this at this stage, whether it just has to go to the council for a determination of whether it is or isn't substantially more detrimental. That's all I have.
Through the chair, make a motion to continue
Thank you.
to the June 2nd meeting.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 And I, unfortunately or fortunately, am still up. I have the next item on the agenda. Is that an item that needs to be read into the record, or?
Next item is 25R Newbury Street. You have the floor, Attorney Kelty.
Thank you. This is a site that had been approved a number of years ago as the site for a medical marijuana distribution and dispensary. My client has made an election that he does not want to go forward with that use. The special permit has since been told in terms of no use, never been exercised. And so we're proposing a storage facility, which would be for personal property. And we have been to construction review. When we were at construction review, we've also been to the Conservation Commission, and we've also been to the ZBA. Those permits are both in hand. When we went to the Construction Review Committee, there was an issue of our having provided to the Conservation Commission a modified plan regarding landscaping that was an improvement that we utilized in the conservation filing. We were given our permit order of conditions from the Conservation Commission, and this evening, when we went to construction review, that page was not included in the package reviewed by construction review. Andrew has stated this evening that the matter ought to be continued on the basis that we have not seen that. We did promise it at the Construction Review Committee, did not get it within a day or two to Andrew. Have it this evening, have supplemented, if you will, the plans that were filed for site plan review with the additional sheet that shows the beefed up landscaping, which was approved by the Conservation Commission. Our promise to Andrew was that you would be looking at the plan that had been reviewed by the Conservation Commission and approved, and the same plan that had been reviewed by Bob Langley for Conservation and likewise for this board. And we're here tonight to walk through, if you'd like, the landscaping plan that's before you this evening. Rick Salvo, is that the sheet?
That's the sheet, yes.
Okay. So it turns out through the very capable use of technology of Mr. Bellavance, he was able to catch the electronic presentation tonight up with what we did bring paper this evening if we were unable to have it put up on the screen, but there it is, and I'm hopeful that we can act on this this evening, since this was the missing link.
Before you go further, Attorney Kelty, we have a little note here that says the description of this project is not accurate, and I was asked to read this description into the record. 25R Newbury Street, map 88, lot 007. This application is by A. Chara Development, LLC, for the proposed construction of a multi-story self-storage facility. Parcel is currently undeveloped. Plan proposes site improvements including paving, modular brick retaining wall, stormwater management facilities, utility connections, and site grading.
Again, that mistake was the original agenda had reflected this as being virtually identical to the piece out front. So Drew fixed it. We now have the proper material in front of us, and we're looking to the board we're here to answer any questions you may have and hopefully approve this plan. Salvo to walk through how it works? Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you again for the record. Rick Salvo with Engineering Alliance, office at 194 Central Street in Saugus, Mass. Actually, this is probably a good plan to stop on here if you want to zoom out a little bit. So this is, I think, in a slightly different orientation than the plan you were looking at before. The Old Brothers Casino is right here. Dom's Power Equipment is here. Strip Way, which provides access into the site. Folks will come into the site, park in this area over here, parallel parking over here. There's an office in this corner. We're providing circulation all the way around the building. We did design these aisles with pretty modest turning radii, as you know, the majority of the folks coming to this site are going to be driving U-Haul trucks and vans and that sort of thing that maybe aren't very used to driving those trucks, so it made it easy for us to fit the turning template on there that was provided by the fire department. It automatically worked because we had designed it for those larger vehicles. Stormwater is managed on the site by a large subsurface detention facility here, which is located at the bottom of the existing slope in a big fill section. There's a retaining wall behind that. Catch basins around the site drain back to that system, which will infiltrate stormwater, promote groundwater recharge. Obviously, this was had to go before the Conservation Commission, which put us into the DEP stormwater regs, so it's been designed in full compliance with the stormwater regs. This site was mined out many years ago at the construction of 128. As a matter of fact, it was owned by MassDOT at one point in the game before it was released back to the ownership. So a lot of the gravels had been mined out of this area. So that's why there's a steep drop from about this area here down to this isolated pocket in the back. The topography drops from about elevation 142 down to about elevation 111. which is why we're proposing this retaining wall along the back to create the flat area for the building. In addition to the Conservation Commission, we did also have a hearing with the Board of Appeals where we received relief for height, FAR, landscaping, and some setbacks to the building overhangs, but not the building itself. So that's essentially the way the site works. So I guess I turn it back to the board for any questions or comments that you have.
It shows on this plan out in front of us, just by way of orientation, that was Brothers Casino. And we're above that hole that is further out there.
Through the chair. Kurt, do we have comments from DPS or a memo or anything? Have they reviewed?
I'm not sure if we got one back already from DPS. We did have a construction review meeting last week, and at that point, there wasn't any objections to the site. I think the key was, could the fire truck get around it? You know, they were missing a landscape plan.
We very typically get
Yeah.
we get a letter. I don't know if one's forthcoming.
It did get the review, and we did get a letter from Bob Langley.
Yeah, so this was reviewed by DPS during the Concom phase, and we responded to all of his comments. I think the same letter was reissued, but all those comments had been addressed during the Conservation Commission prior to them closing their hearing.
Don't have that document with you, do you?
I have our response, though, which
have his letter?
which had his comments back in March. I don't believe I have it, though. That was the responses that went with it back in March.
Just to update the board, we have Bob Langley, who's the Director of Engineering. Now, he's taking over the reviews before Planning Board, Conservation, ZBA, that Will Policy used to do. So he's taking that over. So there may have been, he may have thought he was complete with one reviewer, not needing to know that he'd issue another one for the Planning Board. I'm assuming, so.
Well, that makes sense, Kurt. But the review that the Concom would be interested in would be stormwater. They wouldn't necessarily be interested in sewer, water, curbing, and so on and so forth. I've got to imagine, unless that's all inclusive. So if that's the case, and maybe it, in essence, Bob may have thought that was on a pathway to this board, but it wasn't.
I think if the letter that, that they're reviewing now is a letter to the planning board from Mr. Langley talking about those very issues. And so, yes.
If we do this evening approve this, then I think we have to approve it with the condition that all those issues on that letter are agreed by the proponents to be tended to.
We're fine with that.
And I don't disagree, but are we supposed to receive a communication in this manner, just passing it around for a 30-second review and then?
I believe that's a letter that I only have because it was submitted here.
It's not my.
I'm not.
If I look at the agenda for tonight's meeting and correspondence, there's a reference to a memo from DPS dated April 27th. This is a memo from DPS dated April 27th. I don't know if it was in the packets or not. I don't have it, but
I haven't got a packet.
yeah. and perhaps we would all need more time to review it. There's also a response, which appears to address the 13 items in the, well, most of them, 11 of 13. So I don't know what the pleasure of my fellow board members is relative to going forward.
Well, to take that a step further, if all the items were satisfied, we would get a memo back saying they were satisfied with the answers to their queries.
I would be comfortable myself tonight if we were inclined to vote it, that we condition our approval on receiving such letter.
As we have many times in the past.
Yes. And the fact that it's not like the letter is a late ad. It was put into in the adequate amount of time. It just appears that we didn't get it in our emailed packages.
Jack, can you tell me, I haven't compared the response and the memo, but the memo outlines 13 points that he'd like to see taken care of. The response outlines 11. Which 2 are not responded to or have been eliminated?
He might need to see this thing. I can do that. Take your time. You need this back? Yeah.
So excuse me, Jack, you said that you've already, these 13 items, you've already addressed and/or resubmitted drawings that were requested? Actually, not even, no, that's an as-built. So
the reason why the difference in number of comments is this was the same memo that we had received from the Conservation Commission. Most of the items were addressed. The two comments on here that were added were any state curb cut permits required should be obtained by the applicant, and the recommendation made on page 8 and 9 of the applicant's transportation impact assessment dated July 13th, 2021 by Vanessa Associates should be implemented and shown on the plans for entry to Route 1. Other than that, all the technical comments were all addressed.
But I guess in this case, like the previous case that we just talked about with the used car lot, I suspect that you can't go to MassDOT till you have all your approvals in hand for your access and ingress, or no? Is that different because you're not on the highway?
That's correct. So we filed an indirect access permit because we abut the highway on either side of our property. They will not issue their permit until we have all of our local permits. We've started the process with them, but they've made it clear that until they receive the order of conditions and the site plan approval, they will not issue an access permit.
Is the curve cut actually a moot point because you're going to use the same?
That's correct, yeah. The reason why we had to file with MassDOT is because we abut it on either side, not necessarily because of the curb cut permit. Yeah, that's correct.
What say the board?
May I see the memo from DPS, please?
One more comment. I think Roy might make it. Do you want to ask it? No. You asked it of the last applicant, right? Does the prior applicant's, I don't know what, infringement of that 4 foot into the access road affect you all in any way as far as your access to your site, or? No. And the state will feel the same way?
The only issue raised with respect to those folks that we do share a concern, but we're not opposed to what they want to do, was that the Community Development Department has been sort of mindful that sometimes uses of that nature have a tendency to sprawl, and so we're going to do some marking on the stripway so that there be no on occasion, I fix your car, you're scheduled to pick it up, I bring the next car in, I've got the backup car, your car that just got fixed goes out off the property, and so that's the only concern we have. But we're not concerned about their building. It doesn't interfere with us at all.
No portion of their building hits that stripway? Did I see that on your graphic? Is a little corner of the, or was I
The
looking
corner of their building is on the stripway.
And that doesn't impact your
No.
access
Not
permits or
whatsoever.
anything you need? Okay.
Not whatsoever.
I have a couple of comments through the chair, if you do. Thank you. So, to the engineer, you had said that the catch basins were going to go into that, I think you called it a detention basin? It's not an infiltration basin?
Infiltration basin.
It's an infiltration basin, okay. Roof drains too, I assume, right?
Roof drains as well, that's correct.
Okay. And some sort of storm scepter to clean that
Yep.
before it gets into the wetlands and all
Yep,
that good
there's
stuff?
a CDS water quality inlet prior to the
Okay.
discharge of the system.
I can't really read the plan from here, but how many parking spaces are required and how many are proposed?
There are 6 required, there are 16 proposed.
Okay. So that leads to my next question. Is this facility expected to be fully top to bottom climate controlled?
Yes,
So this is HVAC, heated, maintained humidity, all that stuff?
correct.
Okay, so then I assume for a building of that size, 6 stories, that's correct as well, right?
Correct.
You're going to have a substantial electric service, so you may have to give up one of your parking spaces for a pad mount transformer. That may be very likely, if it's not already drawn in.
Yeah, and it would fit right over here. We have plenty of green space over in this corner to fit one. We wouldn't have to give up a parking spot.
Very good, thank you very much. End of comments.
Jack, you had mentioned that the site was mined out. Will you be bringing fill in, or will you be bringing the rest of your site down to that grade?
We'll be bringing fill in.
But just to a point, right?
Yeah, between probably here and here. So 50 feet. And that's what we've got zone relief for.
That's what CBA gave.
Yes, most likely 2.
Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, move that the board approve
Permit to issue.
the site plan for 25R Newbury Street. Permit to issue subject to compliance with all the comments, conditions, and requirements set forth in the DPS memo of April 27th, 2022.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Roll call? No? You want a roll call on this, Kurt? Nope. Show of hands, please. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Thank you very much.
You want that back?
Were we supposed to discuss, I thought we were supposed to give comments over to the ZBA. I don't see it's on there.
That's it. What else is there?
It's not on the agenda. Is it on your agenda, discussing on ZBA? I'm not the ZBA.
No.
It's not on yours either? I'll open the floor up for some comments on the proposed 40B for Pulaski Street. Anybody have any commentary to offer the ZBA?
No, just please. Just, yeah, I mean, just for clarity's sake, I'm happy with it. I'm pleased that, you know, it's moving forward over there, and, you know, I think it's exciting.
Paraphrase, the board has no objection.
I echo Matt's comments as well, that the the condition of that facility is just unrecognizable now from what it was, say, 3 or 4 years ago. That being said, the parking and the roadway access to that facility is precarious at best, and a lot of people move through that parking lot, pedestrians coming from one side of the building to somewhere else, with total disregard for the traffic. And that, you know, that roadway is privately owned. The land is privately owned for a substantial distance into the park. Upwards of, probably upwards of 1,000 feet in, the roadway is. But then the city has a 30-foot easement for a roadway easement onto that little thin strip that goes very, like I said, very deep into the property. And people do speed on that roadway, and it's hard to imagine that 51 units of housing would make the safety of pedestrians any better than a couple of antique shops and probably a brewery or something that's in that building A. I'm not against it. I just think that it's, you know, there's probably a dozen or 2 dozen businesses up in there in that industrial park, and that's what this is. This is light industrial. It's an industrial park, and like I said, there's a bunch of businesses up there. Some of them that have been there for 30, 40, 50 years, maybe more, and some newer businesses that are there that have been there 5, 10, or 15 years. They're entitled to stay in business and not have complaints from these 51 new unit owners or unit renters that come in and complain about being in an industrial park. So I hope, I believe that this will likely get approved. But, you know, there's a bunch of big, heavy trucks that come in and out of there every day, making deliveries, making pickups. I mean, there's probably the largest property owner in that park is Wayside Trucking, that probably at any one time could have 100 or 200 trailers on site, and his business is renting trailers. So they don't get rented when they're sitting in the lot. They get rented when they get trucked off the lot. They stay at somebody else's property for days, weeks, months, years, and then they come back. So I just hope that this doesn't create a flurry of complaints about noise, because the people who are making their complaints need to be told, you know, you should know that you moved into an industrial park. So that's all I have to say on that matter.
I completely understand what you're saying, but my mind just goes to how, if there are complaints, and inevitably there will be, how is the city going to attempt to enforce or, you know, address the complaints, other than through determining whether or not the use is in compliance with all applicable, you know, noise ordinances and other ordinances? They have a legitimate, you know, a use right to be there. The zoning is appropriate. They've been there a long time, and you know, if there are noise ordinances or similar laws in place that are enforceable in the city that would be used to address any complaints, then that's what's going to happen. But if these businesses that are in existence now are complying in all respects with those things, nothing's going to happen. My comment.
And just a point that I was made aware of, because I was watching the city council meeting on Thursday night, is that they got approval the owner of buildings A, B, and C, which are on the right side of the road, the access road, and Building D, which they happen to own as well, which is a very large building that's L-shaped. So they received city council approval to expand the mill overlay district onto Building D, not for residential purposes. I saw the meeting. It's
Yeah.
not the case?
No, they supported that moving forward, so what's going to happen is they'll come before the planning board for a public hearing because of
Okay,
the zoning map
well, okay,
change.
so that got kicked to us.
And then it goes back to the city council for them to approve.
Okay, fine. So I was worried that that was going to include a residential component as well, and it is not. Its main purpose was to place some of the tenants that will be forced to leave Building A to create the 51 units of residential. So I was a bit relieved to hear that it's not going to they're not going to add 2 or 3 or 4 stories to that building because it's basically a 1-story building and put a bunch of housing on it. So just wanted to convey that info that I learned.
Just a quick comment. When this property was being redeveloped some years ago, one of the thoughts of the board at that time was, why isn't there a residential component in this? And I found out after the fact that the city council thought there would be a lot of complaints about mixing trucks and residential areas. So, but there is a need for housing, no doubt.
Unrelated to this, but just comments to the board afterwards. Not related to what you were just talking about.
Are we being asked to produce a commentary?
Yeah, so part of the process of, once you receive a 40B application, you would send it out to various departments and boards. So the planning board would receive one of those, so it's optional whether the board wants to comment on any of the 40Bs or not, so. Just if you feel like giving an opinion.
I myself am neutral on it, so.
Yeah, I mean, my position would be, let the ZBA do what the ZBA does. And, you know, but I take no position one way or
I'm
the
in
other.
favor, but I don't know if the council at all is or the ZBA or whatever is looking for any sort of formal.
Yeah, I personally doubt that whether we express that we're in favor, it will affect anything that the ZBA does.
I think it's fair to say, though, that the members of this board, including Dennis there on Zoom, are not opposed, right?
Correct.
I'm not opposed either. I think the
Not
location's suitable.
Right, moving on.
A couple of comments for Kurt. Mr. Bellavance. First of all, as you can see tonight, and this is a pet peeve of mine, I bring it up every couple of meetings, every so often. There's 6 board members here tonight. We always run very close to not having a quorum. And we haven't been 100% where we have 9 members and 2 alternates for, I can say, years, I would think. And I was wondering if that's something you could look into. One thing I noticed on other city and town agendas, not all of them, but a couple of them that I've seen, is that on the agenda, at the bottom of their every agenda meeting scheduled, at the bottom it says, planning board members, 2 vacancies. I'm wondering if it would be appropriate or a good idea to, on the agendas that come out for our meetings every 2 weeks, that it says vacancies, board member, 2 members, 2 vacancies, if you need to, if you'd like to apply or if interested or something like that. I know like up in Salisbury, I see their planning board agenda and it says on theirs, 2 vacancies on the planning board, and, in the Board of Appeals agenda, it says there's 1 vacancy and so forth. And I think that might attract attention because I think, obviously, the people that are reading this are people who have some interest, one side or the other, of the planning board meetings. And I don't know if I make a motion, or is that something we just put in discussion at this point and talk about?
Well, the chairman of the planning board has the ability to set the agenda for each week, so that's something that the chairman could do if he wants to put that onto the agenda. It shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, well, I'll put it out there, and then when the chairman comes back the next meeting, maybe I can run that by him again and see what he says. And as long as the city doesn't have an issue with that, and the chairman isn't agreeable to it, I think that would be great way to advertise that we have vacancies, because we're not getting any candidates. And the other thing is, and Kurt, you were on this board a long time ago. I want to say this in a nice way, that I think we were spoiled back then. I mean, we had a clerk or a secretary, whatever you think. Whatever the position was, and things were like right there. It just seems like it's a little chaotic nowadays, and we seem to, always looking for some documents or. I don't know, it was so much better when we had a clerk. And why all of a sudden we stopped having one, I don't know, but we need one. It's like this week alone, it's like we're getting, revisions and documents and things sent to our house, or we have to pick them up, or, it becomes cumbersome and a little confusing I can speak for myself, and I would just love to see things the way they used to be.
I'd like to say something about that, too.
I'll just follow up and say, that's been requested, so it's part of my budget request. So.
That's great, because I looked at the packet that was transmitted by Drew electronically, and as I began to go through all the items on the agenda and all the sub-items and documents within that packet, I realized there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, maybe 1,000 pages. One report was 300 and some odd pages alone. And it's a little much when I'm trying to practice law and I've got one staffer to ask her to take 2 hours and copy all this stuff and put it together for me. That's something we didn't have to do in the past with Tessa. And we are volunteering, we're not compensated. And, it would be much appreciated by me if that's something that we could not be required to do, just to be up to speed where we should be when the meeting rolls around.
Perhaps someone could make a motion that all our informational packets be in the form of hard copy from now going forward.
Well, I'm not prepared to make that motion, maybe somebody else is, but just a commentary to Kurt. And in no way, shape, or form is this against Drew, but I think this is probably the most succinct way to say it, is Drew has a full-time job. This is not it. And I think what happens is these duties that were foisted upon Drew sometimes fall through the cracks, as opposed to a person who was either a full-time or like, say, a 19-hour or 20-hour in City Hall with then hours to come to the meetings. All the paperwork was always in order. All the minutes were always filed, always crafted in a timely fashion. And again, I think the cleanest way to say it is that these were just added to his full-time duties. And if you say that you got money budgeted, that's great. advertise it, make sure the person has the skill set necessary to do this work, whether the chairman participates in the interview with you or the mayor or whatever. But that's what we need, and we need the documents either hand-delivered or mailed to our house, and not have to drive here to pick them up. It's always the way it was, and trying to look at stuff electronically on a computer is a bear. So.
Right, and I agree with everything that everybody's saying, and I know you don't see all the other work that Drew does, but you feel it on, things like you mentioned, not having things the way they used to be. Last year Drew got 3 different grants for the city. He's working on different projects. He sits on the Main Street Board, the Peabody Cultural Board. He runs the construction review. So he does all these things, and so to, like you said, add this other layer of, what used to be a full-time job that, was then a part-time job, it's tough for him. So, he's doing a good job, and I know you guys know that, but we definitely want to get him some help, that someone's dedicated to the planning board.
But what certainly an outsider doesn't realize is that job isn't just an hour and a half or 2 hours every other Thursday. That job has a lot of backroom stuff to do. Managing things, making calls to proponents, telling them, hey, the drop dead date is tomorrow at noon or something. I don't have your stuff. You're getting knocked off the agenda. That's what that person needs to be doing.
And Roy just touched on what I was about to say, too. To further comment, well, first of all, I want to say my comments have nothing to do with Drew and his abilities and his job. He's doing a great job. He's got a full-time job, and then he's got all this stuff added on here. Further commenting on what we're talking about, it's on both sides of the aisle, which Roy just mentioned a little bit of it, like tonight. I don't think there was a presenter up here that had everything 100% that he was supposed to have. Why? Because there's no secretary or clerk telling him, hey, look, drop dead deadline's tomorrow, and if you don't get it in, you're not going to see the board this week. And because there's no secretary or clerk to say that, therefore, everything's being delayed, and it's just going to take, it takes longer to put things through and so forth. So I really think it's, I'm glad that you have that in your budget. I hope it's not just a wish thing that's probably not going to happen. But we're sinking here. We need help. Like I said, and like Peter said, we're all volunteers, and it seems like I get documents and packages and I get revisions and emails. I don't know. I got to figure out what actually are we seeing or hearing tonight, or what's postponed, or what, and then there's always late ads. Every meeting you come to, we're accepting something late. There are rules and guidelines to follow, and people aren't following them, and it just makes our job more difficult.
I'm sorry, one quick thing. In addition to trying to get more people to this board, excuse me, I know this is probably a somewhat difficult request, but we really could use a civil engineer on this board. We used to have one. Unfortunately, the gentleman passed away. I'm an electrical engineer, but not much of these plants have anything to do with electrical. So sometimes having a guy with a different set of eyes looking at something can ask a specifically directed question that maybe somebody else might have missed, another set of eyes, another set of trained eyes. So if possible, that would be wonderful. Right, John?
Truly, I've seen engineers just throw out a plan and they're bam, 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 what about this, what about this, what about this? Where the rest of us, I might make some sense of it in 4 or 5 days, but boom, what about this? What are you going to do here? Civil engineer would be primo. I
Yes.
agree. We're on TV, right? Yes, we are. Ladies and gentlemen of Peabody, we have a couple of slots on the planning board. If you have a little engineering experience, please contact the mayor's office and join us. Thank you.
Just one comment, I just want to, this is for Drew. Everything I said, as everybody else has said, has nothing to do with you. I know, as we all do, that you are overburdened, and you would love to be able to have extra time if there were 26 hours in a day to do what we are asking be done, but you simply don't. You're doing a great job.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Aye.
Recording stopped.